Good morning, everybody. My name is Justin Flynn. I'm the chair of the New Zealand Tech Marketers Group, and today I am super excited to welcome Brooke Roberts, who's the CEO of Sharesies. I expect many of us are customers, users, investors in Sharesies. And thanks to Ming and Tim and our Wellington crew for organising this for our webinar today. So we're going to go through, I've got some really good questions around kind of hearing a little bit about your background, Brooke, and how Sharesies got started. And then we're really keen to dig deeper into some of the brand story and some of the marketing strategy and some of the insights that you can share with everyone along the way. We'll pause momentarily throughout if people have any kind of key questions. If you do, you're welcome to drop them in the chat, please, rather than say putting up a hand. But if you drop them in the chat, I'll be able to ask Brooke, and if we've got a little bit of time at the end, we can have a little more open forum. So for those of you who have never been to an NZ Tech Marketers Group event, we're a national community for tech marketers, marketers working for SaaS or technology companies, or marketers working in highly technical marketing roles. So it might be CRM or automation, or any kind of digital marketing roles. So we've been around 6 or 7 years now, and we have over 250 members, a fantastic executive leadership team, and we run a whole series of in-person, face-to-face events around Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, Hamilton, Queenstown, and our annual conference, which we had last month as well. So you can also access mentoring and our emerging leaders program, which Corin Cryer is running. So jump onto the website and please join if you haven't already. Brooke, it's awesome to have you here. Thank you for spending some of your day with us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about your background, your story. Did you always know that you'd be running a company? Was that kind of always your dream?
I did get into that when I was actually at high school, but I wanted to be a fashion designer for a while, and I thought that was the path I was going to go down. And I started entering awards in high school and going along to them, and then seeing these other incredible fashion designers, and I was like, okay, they're really good. Maybe what I could do is help them commercialize their designs. Like they were really good, but they hadn't thought about like how to sell it or like increase production. And I was like, oh, maybe I could do that. So I thought I'd go into fashion business and I'd do that side. And so when I was at school, I did run some businesses. I talked to my business studies teacher. I was like, hey, I've got this idea. And she's like, oh, there is this thing called Young Enterprise. We haven't done it here for a few years, but if you want to do that, we could give that a crack. And so for 2 years, I ran 2 businesses at Young Enterprise and loved it. I learned heaps. Honestly, some of the things I learned in that I still reflect on in like business today. It's kind of shaped how I think about a lot of things. And then I was like, oh, do I go to university or not? And I wasn't going to. I'd been offered a job actually as an accountant, and they were going to pay for me to study, and then I get full-time salary. And it was what I was nearly about to do. But last minute, I was like, no, I do want to go come here to Pōneke, come here to Wellington and study. And so I picked up. I was studying marketing and international business, and then I in my 3rd year felt like I needed something more like with some. I really found out I like numbers essentially, and picked up finance too. I actually found out I like numbers through this 300 level marketing class we had, where we had 300 of us in the room. We had a guest lecturer who came in. Wish I knew their name for the detail of it, but they said, "Put your hand up if you like numbers." And out of a marketing room of 300 students, only 3 of us put our hand up, and I was like, "Okay, I should do something about this." So yeah. Very happy I picked up finance. Kind of makes sense for where I am today. But I never thought I could pull them together. I never thought like marketing and finance, there would be a job or career that combined both of them. And that was really solidified in a lot of the lecturers' thinking I had at that time. I remember I had to go to one of my finance lecturers' offices to go get my results that he had marked midterm. And he's like, why are you studying marketing? All you're going to learn is how to stock shelves. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy has no idea about the real world and like how things actually work. Very theoretical. And I was like even more proud that I was studying this. So I ended up doing honors in marketing and masters in finance. And I was like, oh, I want a career and maybe somewhere in this. And it wasn't until I heard a banking CEO talk who had a marketing background, who was in banking, and this is at Kiwi Bank at the time. And I was like, oh, you can combine them. I'd heard pretty much, oh, if you're going to be a CEO, it's pretty much, the CFO kind of track. And that was very much that way that long ago now, I guess. And so anywho, I ended up in banking. I worked at Kiwi Bank, had a great time in product management. And it was like the perfect hybrid for me. I was like, there was hedging, I was pricing term deposits, savings accounts, transactional accounts, going to these weekly pricing meetings about how what we're doing is impacting what's happening in the economy and what changes we're going to make. So I loved all of that. And then also deep diving into the behavioral economics or behavioral finance side of how can we help people have better habits with money? What are things that we can find in the data? And then what are like innovative solutions that we can do to be able to create better savers or whatever we're looking at. And so had that ability to figure out how we market the products and how we make sure we're creating things that really have an awesome need for people, and did a lot of customer research. And so it was like a real happy place. I found like, yeah, I could bring them together. And then use those strengths throughout my career. I then ended up at Xero. I really wanted to learn like how a company from Aotearoa scales globally and how an international business worked. I obviously was interested in that from studying it too. And got to be part of the ecosystem marketing global area there too. So doing global marketing, which I really enjoyed. And then on the side throughout my entire time studying and working in these companies, I was tutoring with business ideas on the side. And ultimately the idea for Sharesies came about from one of our other co-founders, Sonia. And then all of a sudden there's 6 of us rallied around this hectic problem of, how do we create more wealth equity in Aotearoa and beyond. And it's what we solve today.
There's a really interesting point that you made there about your time with Kiwi Bank around the customer psychology and understanding some of those deep problems. And I've always wondered, should I go back and do psych? Because as a marketer, understanding people is such an important part. And it sounds like that was a really key ingredient to shaping your thinking around, the Sharesies proposition as well, was really understanding some of the problems that people were having and how those dynamics work.
Yeah, when we started Sharesies, we weren't like, here's Sharesies, here's the prototype, ta-da, it was actually, hey, we think people in Aotearoa deserve a better way to develop wealth and deserve more access to it, but do they want that? And so we spent 6 months just doing pure customer research, like ethnographic research. We would talk with somebody and they'd open up be so vulnerable about their experiences with money and what they felt about money and how it worked in their life, and if they had ever thought about investing or if they were an investor, and where did their KiwiSaver fit into that. And all of these like rich conversations we had with hundreds of people ended up forming like a lot, like really concisely the problem statement. You started to see the repetition of, people feel priced out, like you can't be an investor because you need tens of thousands, or they feel jargoned out, which is still a problem today. Like financial jargon's just hectic and doesn't need to be there. Or ultimately what we called left or branded out, like it just didn't feel like it was for them. The whole industry is like, it was very blue at the time and very opaque feeling. And so that's a bit about why our branding is kind of the way it is too.
So with that customer research, like you were at Xero, how did you transition? I mean, there were 6 of you that kind of coalesced around this idea, you said you had a lot of customer research and kind of figuring out. How did you manage that shift from working full time and then Jenison into the company?
There was, after having all those conversations, the risk of not doing it felt greater than doing it. Because it felt like, oh, we've really got to, like, this is what
It's
I was
important.
so ripped up by the, like, how do we solve this? That it felt there's also a bit of safety there too, because there was this fintech accelerator that was about to kick off. So we entered the idea into that. And that was really great because that gave us a spot to go to and a time to start. And so, and the companies that we worked at, 3 of us went full time into that accelerator, and it was pretty incredible that the companies we worked at that time gave us extended leave to do that. So we also, like, if it didn't work out within the 3 months, we couldn't build Sharesies. We actually did have roles to go back to, which was incredibly kind of those companies, essentially, and just shows, yeah, how great they were.
Wow. When did Sharesies launch? I should know this, but
yeah, no, so it's our 6th birthday this week.
that's right. I saw that.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah,
6
so
years.
we've got a few dates, right? And we decided to land on that the date that we call our birthday is the date that, like, we got out of that gestation period and we got our first beta customer, which was May 29th, 2017. So 6 years on.
Congratulations and happy birthday, Sharesies.
Yeah.
No doubt there have been some significant and daunting challenges along the way. Are there a couple that, are kind of highlights that, well, highlights or lowlights, ones that have, that you'll never forget, that you've had to overcome, and tell us a couple of them, perhaps? I'm sure there's a whole webinar full of war stories, but
I mean, one's a marketing nightmare, so we'll start with that one, which is also hilarious in retrospect. So it's early in June, but this time, maybe it was a bit later, around this time anyway, 6 years ago, we were interviewed for TV on TV1 News, which was super exciting, right? Like, that's when you're building something that's quite mainstream, and being able to have that kind of access is incredible. So we're really excited to be interviewed about Sharesies and what we're up to. And we did the interview, and then all of the founders were at our houses, and we're sitting down watching it with our computers up with Intercom, which is a place where if customers are and tracking customers coming through the funnel, and if they've got any questions, we're there to respond. Because at 6:15 the segment went live with all Sharesies, and people started flooding to our website, which is great. And they started signing up. And then in the sign up process, one of the companies that we use to verify people's information, because we have to, for AML, we need to capture the identity, had decided to have a blackout period right at that time. So couldn't literally sign up. So thankfully, in our sign up flow, we had got people's email addresses. So we knew how to connect with people, but nobody could get through to Sharesies. You couldn't complete sign up because we didn't have your ID. And it was just like, what? Like the prime time. And yeah, we couldn't. But it was really, but what was great about it, and I think that why I reflect on that moment so fondly, is that was a really test of the founding group at that time. How are we going to respond? Or are we going to, are you going to place blame on how did the people that deal with this partner not know, or whatever? And really, we were just all laughing. Like, it was just so funny in a way, because just how ridiculous that was. And then the people that are signing up, and because we're responding to them and being like, oh, hey, sorry, and sending out emails, that is like, they're laughing back, and they're just like, oh my gosh, Murphy's Law, we'll give it another crack, don't you worry. And we're quite scared about something like that. We didn't want anything like that to happen when you're dealing with people's money, and you need to build trust and credibility. And so having a outage like that really isn't the best way to start. But I feel like we've overcome that. But yeah, that's one challenging moment that I kind of reflect on fondly.
Yeah. Sometimes as a tech marketer, stuff's always broken, right? And you're trying your best to piece together a stack that works seamlessly, and then out of your control something goes down. But yeah, you've got to. It is the test, isn't it, in terms of how you respond to that? I think it's really, like you said, it's really important. Anything else? One more? All right, so my next question then would be...
No, I do. I was like just going through the Rolodex of problems, essentially. One I think is quite, one I think, and I was just thinking like what one's relatable in particular from a marketing sense. One I found really interesting on reflection, and I hated at the time, is we had to actually close some people's accounts due to AML. And the risk wasn't that people were laundering. There's actually no laundering risk, but there was a risk associated with an interpretation of the regulation. And we decided that it was in the best move for Sharesies to offboard some customers. And that's really hard when it's totally against everything that you, like you've naturally built up, but also, being compliant and being seen to be compliant is really, really important too. So it was something we had to do. And then it's like, how do you the balance of like the cost and care in that situation, like when you're offboarding customers, there's already costs associated with that, with obviously onboarding people is attracting, and so you're offboarding when people are leaving, like there's costs associated, but also when a lot of these customers that we did were thankfully like really unengaged anyway, so that was okay in kind of a business metric perspective. But I also was like, these are humans that have really tried to sign up to Sharesies, and it's just like a technicality that we don't have one piece of information that we should have captured or whatever it might have been. And that was really difficult to go, how do we make sure we show the right amount of care, even though like the cost equation is really not there. But it feels right, and it's the right thing to do, and right from a values perspective. So, with these customers, we emailed, we called, we like tracked them down as much as possible to try help them get that last information in before we needed to offboard them. And I think I was really impressed by how the team rallied around that. They really showed the Sharesies values and leaned into that, even though like the cost benefit equation really wasn't there. That's another random example.
Interesting. Both of those examples, Brooke, really give insight into the company culture. And how many people in the business now?
There's just over 150.
So in 6 years, you've gone from 6 to 150, which creates an awful lot of challenges around, building culture and building the values that you have in the business, and living those values every day, so you don't lose that as you grow headcount. What are some of the things that the team has been able to do to build that culture?
I think when one of the most important meetings I think we had at Sharesies was when we sat down and the founders sat down really early on, within the first week of being in that accelerator, and talked through, when you are creating more than a product or like an app in somebody's hands, there's a whole business behind it. And we sat down and talked about what is the type of business that we wanted to create, what are things that we never want to see happen in the places in our workplace, what are things we really want to change, what are attitudes we want to bring and see amongst each other. And we bullet pointed down all of the conversation that each of us had and the insights we got from those questions, and that ultimately themed up to our values. It became really clear, like, as a founding group, we really care about it having an in it together culture, not a individualistic culture. Knowing, I get to be here and talk to you all today because of all the hard mahi that everybody is doing behind the scenes at Sharesies. And then and another key value that came out of this conversation was always care, making sure we could care for ourselves, because that was something that was quite interesting as we're going into a startup. And one of the founders is just about to have a baby. Others, I was about to become hapu, didn't know it at this time. But and I think that being able to care for yourself, knowing it's a ultra marathon, I guess, and being able to care for each other, and ultimately too, and caring for our investors, our customers, and making sure that there's always care put in there, and probably shows in those examples I mentioned before. And then chase remarkable. Chase remarkable meaning like to be remarkable, it's always a chase. Like you're always, it's the chase is kind of the affirmative word there, but it's about putting that cherry on top, like going above and beyond, taking calculated bold risks, and just doing something that people actually find remarkable, that they remark, essentially. And those are the values that we live and breathe today, and it's incredible how they've evolved over time as we've grown. And also, and that is essentially a good summary of what our culture's like.
Have you had have you taken a bold risk that's fallen flat?
Yep. Yep. So we probably in our launch into Australia. So we as 2019, 2020, it's bad timing. Like on reflection, didn't know a pandemic was about to come. It was 2020, and we were really confident from the research we've done that we should go into Australia like big bang. That was our approach, which is so funny looking back on it. But anyway, and I'll tell you why. But we decided that, yep, cool, this research is showing us that, and the competitor landscape wasn't completely there. It was just starting. So it felt like, hey, if we go in there quite strong, we could really capture this market in a mass market way. So we hired an agency. We did like the most like hectic TVC we'd ever done. And went about it all wrong. Now, that's just definitely not the way to enter a market in my perspective. And I think we knew that, like, there was this weird tension at the time. We just felt like we kind of were a bit guided by, or swept up in the moment, I think, or really felt like we had something. But what we know and what we know well, and what we did really well here in Aotearoa, I think, is just focus on building a community, and over time just watching that scale and building something like the most lovable product that then people refer to their friends, and it gets this natural kind of word of mouth. And 25% of our growth in Aotearoa when we started was all word of mouth and referrals. So we're a little bit hamstrung in Australia there. It's a little bit different to be able to refer there, which also makes it a bit more difficult for us to be able to capture that kind of growth. But yeah, we spent money, we did some TVCs, we launched around a pandemic, great timing. And and I think, what we're doing now, we're getting incredible results by connecting with the community, building products that customers love, having a beta, everything we did here at the start. So that's just one example.
Building that brand equity is a really core part of the marketing strategy, I think, and we'll dig a little bit deeper into this over the next half an hour. First of all, I want to know, who's the target audience? So how did you decide who the target audience was be, or have they decided who did you have a really clear customer persona or set of personas, or has that really evolved organically through over time?
Yeah, we're like a antithesis of marketing in this regard, I think. Our whole purpose is to give financial empowerment, to create financial empowerment for everyone. So like in Aotearoa, we want to be able to speak to everyone, whether you've got $5 to 5 million, whatever age, gender, like we want to make sure that we're building something that anybody can feel like they belong and feel included in this world that so many people have felt excluded from. So that's really important to us. I think we learned early on that those three barriers I mentioned were massive in people's minds, that we needed to make sure we built a product and then made sure people really understood, literally there is no minimum to invest. You can invest however much do you want, when you want, or we just used everyday language and built a brand presence that felt inclusive and fun and like that you belong, and that was really important. So we didn't be like, our target market is this age group, they shop here, they do that. We didn't do that. We just really wanted to make sure anyone could feel like they were included. In Australia, I would say the approach is similar but a little bit different. And it's mostly because of some of the relationships we've built there. Here we've, a lot of our growth has come from us getting out there and press and the referrals, like I said. In Australia, it's quite a big and kind of crowded market, but also there's, kind of bigger pools in some way. And there's also been a groundswell since we started Sharesies, and in particular in Australia, of podcasts and communities that are around investing and finance and things like that. So we've a lot of our work there is really connecting and being, and supporting those communities. So working with She's on the Money or My Millennial Money or Equity Mates, and building through supporting those communities a lot and working with them. So it's been a little bit different in that regard, but yeah, I'd say there's still not like that clear, defined one single view of a customer. Now now that we've got enough information, enough data, enough kind of like understanding of different habits, we can start pulling together segments based on like behavioral. We could people's behavior essentially, and going, cool, well, if people behave like this and they want to, what are the features that we offer to support them? What are the ways that are best to communicate to them? And so we're starting to build out a bit more of a refined approach like that, I'd say.
It's interesting challenges between the different markets or the different countries you're in, because everyone's got different financial regulations and things like that. That certainly adds complexity, because there isn't, every market's going to be very, very unique, isn't it? So now you're kind of evolving, the company's maturing, you're 6 years old. Can you share any insight into kind of the key pillars of your marketing strategy and that go to market that you're working on now?
Key pillars of our marketing strategy and go to market. So a lot of what the position we're in at the moment is this year, and literally in the last couple of months, we've added a few new areas that we saw that people could really have better access to wealth opportunities. So one is Save. We've launched a Sharesies Save. And what we've done there is made sure that people get a great rate and have the flexibility to access that when they need it, rather than it kind of being locked up. And another one is KiwiSaver, and we've innovated in that space. So what's really interesting from us at the moment here in Aotearoa in particular, in terms of a marketing opportunity, is engaging the people that are already engaged with Sharesies and making sure they're aware of these opportunities and how it works and how it interacts with their whole kind of wealth picture. So that's a key
vertical. That's vertical. Also, horizontal product development, right? So you started off with the investment, you've gone to the savings account, which is great. I love that, and then the KiwiSaver as well. So you're starting to own more of that, their portfolio, if you like.
Yeah, and then from an external perspective, it's making sure that we're like evolving in people's minds, and that kind of repositioning of, we are where you can be with your KiwiSaver, all your, an empowering money app essentially, or empowering wealth app for all of your kind of wealth needs with saving and investing, and KiwiSaver, and helping people develop that over time. So yeah.
What is it? You kind of touched on this a bit earlier on, right? It's, you're managing and dealing with people's money. How, as a new kid on the block, this really a very different brand to what people have experienced before in the world of finance and managing their money. Can you give it, like, how have you intentionally built trust? What are some of the things you've done to really build and develop that trust factor with customers?
Yeah, I think one, being here in Aotearoa and Australia, we're in a highly regulated industry, which is really crucial because, at the end of the day, it is people's money. And I think people knowing that is really helpful. Seeing how we work within that environment, being able to answer any of those questions is crucial too. But also like getting to know the humans behind Sharesies is one. I remember one thing that definitely helped us in the early days too was one of New Zealand's most loved and trusted brands is Trade Me, and Trade Me bought a portion of Sharesies, and I think just moments like that over time, and that helped solidify, I think, for some people that credibility. And then we've got a range of shareholders and like Ngāi Tahu now too, and I think that Ngāi Tahu in particular too are known as really good investors, and so if they're picking us, that they've that there's some work there. So it's something that we've built over time for sure, and I think in those early days people would test the platform, right? Like, I'll put a bit of money in and take it out. How did that work? Oh, that worked, and then over time it's built. It's definitely a time thing.
So you mentioned about building community and that being, deeply centered into building trust and referrals and growth. You've got a podcast. I know I see weekly interviews with CEOs of listed companies and things like that. So what role has social media played in your marketing strategy, and alongside that really is that community development strategy?
It's been a big part of a way that we can engage with people. I think what you mentioned there was something that's really important to us, and it's part of that, breaking down that jargon or getting rid of it, is a lot of the educational work we do, if not all of it actually, is free and accessible to anybody, whether you're using the Sharesies platform or not. And that's really important because we do really want to make sure that people are more financially empowered.
Nothing's gated.
Yeah, exactly. And
No.
the reason why we started Shared Lunch, which you talked about, of like interviewing CEOs and economists and experts, is because as we've dived into this world of the finance industry, we've learned so many and seen so many more doors that people are locked out of. And one was, these big institution investors, they get to go and meet with the CEOs and go to the boardrooms and have conversations. How do we unlock that? How do we make sure like retail investors or anybody can get those insights to help them make informed decisions when it comes to investing, or how they're building their portfolio? And so that was a really key part of why we decided to start Shared Lunch. And so there's always doors like that we start to uncover, like, people aren't getting access to be able to be part of these capital raises that companies are doing. How do we get in there? Or actually these employees, how can we help more employers offer shares to their team, given that, and sharing that wealth creation? And so these are things that we do now, and we just keep, if we see a door that's shut to retail investors or to, everyday people, will try get in there and open it, and so
is there an ESOP program? Is there an ESOP program that's been developed now?
Yeah. So for now, if a company is listed, we work with companies to provide their team with access to shares. Yeah, which is pretty awesome.
That's really interesting.
But back to that role of social media, I think it is a really important place to build community and build brand and build that personality and show it coming to life in every day behind the scenes, whether it be in the in the office or what we're thinking, to being responsive to people when they do have questions or even concerns, and just making sure that they know that there's a channel there for that. And we built there's a share club in Facebook, which we built, and I'd say we're starting to build a lot more community now on Instagram and TikTok.
Okay.
Actually, as we move a bit more into that business to business space, I think LinkedIn starts to grow too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even for B2C brands, LinkedIn is an underutilized platform. Is your social media management in your community, is that all in-house? Is there agency relationships at play to do some of that?
No.
So you've deliberately decided to build capability internally to be able to manage all of that?
Yep. We use like Sprout Social, but that's about it. I think
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. It needs to feel authentic and real and from us. And
So let's go the other way then, and think about the moment when you're kind of building organically through social, through digital. And what was the point where you kind of go, we need to go bigger, we need to be starting to use more mainstream media, we need to be using TV, radio, print? How have you kind of built out that more traditional? You've talked a lot about PR, which has been really, really important, but I'm interested in kind of that marketing strategy for more traditional, above the line.
Yeah, I think it's more natural for us to be digital first. I think our head of marketing, Rachel, was saying that to me the other day too. And but we know that like a strong offline presence is really important for that brand legitimacy and that trust. So we spend about 35 to 50% of campaign budgets on awareness building, and that is largely offline, like you're saying, TV, billboards, audio. When we chose to do that, I'm trying to remember our first billboard campaign, or poster campaign, actually, Grow Your Go, must have been 2019. And it was just so exciting to see Sharesies on the streets, like out of this digital sphere. But I think it was an important part to start building that mainstream and that recognition and those data points that are just not seen behind a screen. And bring Sharesies to life a bit more. And yeah, then we started to run TVCs, must be around 2019, around that time. And this is when and we really didn't start to invest in anything like that until we knew we had product market fit, essentially. So when we started Sharesies, we put no marketing money behind it. Because we wanted to know that we'd built something that was selling itself. It wasn't our marketing dollars that were kind of bringing things in, but then people not really engaging. So once we'd start to go, okay, there's traction here, there's a bit of a groundswell, these referrals are happening, people are finding us, we're getting PR, this is our opportunity, and we've got the thing humming now in a spot that we can start growing more. Then that's when those kind of offline media started to play.
How are you measuring success? How do you know when marketing is doing well?
We're using Tracksuit now, which is quite helpful in a bunch of ways in terms of understanding your awareness and consideration and how that's going, but also kind of testing phrases. And it's quite important as we start looking at, making sure that our brand is evolving and what what people know us for is evolving. And that's a kind of good way to test that.
Obviously there's kind of in-app metrics around new user growth, and
so that's top of the funnel kind of stuff. And then once you're at like that conversion rate is important. And when people come in, are they seeing that they want to become an investor, and then once they're an investor, are they actually and they sign up, are they becoming one? Are they depositing money and saving it or investing it and feeling confident enough to make those decisions, and then tracking how they're going over time.
Okay, if anybody has any questions for Brooke, please drop them in the chat. I'm gonna so how does product and marketing work together? I'm assuming they work well together. How have you built that relationship and collaboration between marketing and product so that you're
I'm going to go way back and then because I think that helps shape the learnings that that I've noticed anyway that we've implemented in Sharesies. So I've been a product marketer before, and but reporting into a marketing team, and my view, it doesn't really work. if you're not integrated together, I think it's really difficult. It becomes kind of this waterfall. You don't have all the shared context. You have to work really hard on it, and it just gets a bit. I think it gets a bit tricky. So what we do now is that we have like there's Invest and Save, and there's Australia, and there's KiwiSaver, and there's company partnerships in their areas, and then we've got a marketing lead and product lead that report into them. And I've just noticed we implemented this kind of structure at the start of the year, and I've just noticed such great ways of like context sharing, and then the ability to problem solve together and just work in harmony as peers. And I think that is the best way for product and marketing to work together from my experience so far, right? And this is just my view and what I've witnessed. I'm not saying it's the view, but it's working really, really well. And I think, you need to be hand in hand, and you need to be you need to, sometimes be in the same rooms and having those really good conversations about what's parts of the product that really need to be communicated better. How are we going to communicate that? Oh, I've noticed this. What do you think? People are saying, they'd like this feature. How are we going to build that in? Oh, and it's just like this beautiful harmony and such important parts of the business. And you're in this shared language, which is really exciting. Then the challenge of that is when you step back into the broader marketing team is like, great, so we've got these really good insights. How do we make sure that it creates a cohesive story and a cohesive experience for our investors? And that's something that we've combined design and marketing. So that's the key part of that team is like, great, we've got these really good insights, and we've got these ways that we want to market, and how do we pull that all together so that it makes a cohesive experience for users. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, but
that's really interesting.
Roles, they need to work as peers.
Yeah. What's your tech stack? What's the marketing tech stack?
So we use Braze for
marketing automation.
Yep, marketing automation. What else? We do a lot of things in house at the moment. We've got really good we use Dash for data insights, and so we've got awesome marketing analysts that helps build dashboards and things like that. So we've got real-time information, or as close to real-time information that our team can track. We use Tracksuit, like I said.
CRM.
Yeah. Pardon?
CRM.
No, well, we built it ourselves. It's our own, admins.
Yeah. Okay, we've got some interesting questions coming through.
Our website, and then our website's bespoke, but use Contentful to help.
Okay, nice. Question from Brian. There's a perception amongst financial advisors that Sharesies is not for serious or real investors. How are you managing that? Is that, how do you think about, how are you managing that? Is that something, I guess Brian, financial advisors are kind of might always have a little bit of a to it.
Yeah, it kind of plays into that elitism in this industry, where it's like, try and create different classes of investors or whatever. But, we've got people on our platform with, $0 to millions and millions of dollars. And it's a place where anybody can invest what they want. I think there are differing incentives in this industry. And I think there's the one element that we haven't done as much to date, which if I was speaking more rationally, I guess, about that perspective, is we haven't really been onboarding trusts and companies, but that's something that we've started to do, because a lot of people who have more wealth will typically have it in a trust or a company. But we are starting to now look at onboarding them. So that's something that I guess might help financial advisors see, they have a bit more of the things that we need to be able to give advice. But there's it's a mix. It's like a bit of the industry at play, but also a bit of maybe fixed to date.
Great question from Sophie. I would love to know what you love listening to and reading to stay inspired and educated in all things marketing. Where do you go for your marketing inspiration? Who do you, is there a...
I get it in different ways. Honestly, to our team, like, I think it's really it's an interesting part of growing a company as a founder, you know, where Sonia Layden and I had all marketing backgrounds, and we, you know, kind of gave it a go at things. Then you hire people that are way smarter and better at things than you, and you're like, wow, that's cool. And so my team's they've been wanting me to obviously do some more stories and behind the scene perspectives, or sharing insights for TikTok and Instagram, and they're just continually living me up or sending me things that they think are good. And so that's one way. Honestly, the team share a lot of their thoughts with me that are really inspiring. I like reading The Economist and also the newspaper. Like, I think actually when I look at, so like one little ritual I like is, if I can get a spare 20 minutes in the day, I don't drink coffee, but I'll have a cup of tea and I'll sit down at a cafe and read the newspaper. And I sound so weird. Oh, not weird. I just sound, I don't know. Yeah, it's a luxury if I get to do that. So I get really stoked when I get to do that. And I did get to do that this morning, which was nice. And I read, and then when I look at the newspaper, like dots come, like things fly into my mind, like, oh, that's an interesting data point. What's Sharesies' perspective on that? Oh, there's actually probably a story there. So I find like I can get inspired in different ways like that, in terms of that thought leadership views that Sharesies can bring, view that Sharesies can bring. I really like this email I get from James Clear. It's this weekly email you get, which you can sign up. It's free, and it gives you quotes to ponder for the week. We get it on a Friday morning. They send it Thursday US time, and I really like to mull and think about some of those quotes that come through that, and the kind of questions that brings up in my mind. So I just get inspired all around me. I don't have probably like a really great go-to, but there's some.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. So what's next? I mean, you're 6 years old. You've started entering and growing into Australia. You've got 150 people. You're starting to build out that horizontal product suite. What's the ambition from here?
There's so much. Honestly, it sounds like over 6 years, or every day feels like day one. Like the problem feels even more prevalent, and and the opportunity also does too. And so, you know, any ways that we can be supporting more people in Aotearoa in Australia to have financial empowerment is like what we're gun for. So at the moment we see that a massive opportunity, in particular with KiwiSaver. When we first did research with Sharesies, it was really interesting to see how many people didn't feel like an investor, but they had KiwiSaver, and KiwiSaver is where the majority of their wealth is, and didn't know where it was. Some thought it was in a savings account at Kiwibank. You know, there's just really low awareness and confidence with KiwiSaver, and ultimately also low control of where people think that money is going, or where it is going. And I think that's really crucial, because that money is funding our like personal futures, but also like Aotearoa's future. Like it's wherever our money goes in KiwiSaver, we're investing in companies or funds that are shaping the future, and whether it's going offshore or onshore. So anyway, you can hear I'm very passionate about that. So there's a lot to solve there, I think, and that's something that I think you'll see us dive more and more into, and supporting people building that confidence and control, and really understanding of where the greatest amount of a lot of their wealth is, which is in KiwiSaver. Yeah.
How do you share the responsibilities between your 3 EOs? How do you manage your day?
Yeah.
Stay sane.
Yeah. Well, that's how we stay sane. I guess share the load, you know. It's so nice. I have been the sole CEO before, and it's really awesome being in part of this 3O model, because you do get to move faster and you do get to share the load. And I guess and you have a shared consciousness on things like when you're making decisions. And so yeah, no, it works really well. One of the three EOs, Sonia's on parental leave at the moment, so it's Layden and I. And while she's on parental leave, she's still directing, which is great. So the way that it's split up, or the way that we've split the role, has just really changed throughout time. And it used to be a bit more based on our natural strengths, and now it's based a bit more on us being, really taking a holistic view and diving into the, divvying things up as we see best, and just making sure that we're supporting Sharesies' growth and future aspirations as best as we can.
Is it playing to each of your strengths, or is there sometimes roles, teams that you're managing that you're leaning, or you're maybe a little bit outside your comfort zone, or that are more of a challenge?
Yeah, I think it used to be like naturally divided by the areas that we're naturally kind of carved in Sharesies, and now it's not. Now it's more about just being a bit more of a holistic kind of CEO in that regard.
Yeah. We've got lots of amazing marketers on this call from around New Zealand. Some of us have been marketers for 20 years. Some of us are in our first or second job. What's some advice that you'd like to share with our tech marketing community?
One trap I notice people get into is that their customer becomes the internal customer. It's very easy to do. Like, it's very easy to accidentally fall into that trap where you're like, I can help solve that for them, or do this thing, and then you're in this internal dialogue all the time. And I think, and I'm not saying that people on this call are doing that, but it's something sometimes to check your balance on. And I've had to do this throughout, and to say, actually, where's the best place for me to be as a in marketing at any time, is like making sure I'm bringing those insights in from really talking to people and talking to those customers. And I think it's something you hear all the time, and you're like, yes, but like, how are you building a practice of making sure that you're communicating with your end users or the end customers at least weekly, if not daily? How are you bringing that in? Because those insights create such richness for how you speak, you interact with others in the company in terms of what you're hearing and understanding, but also making sure you're building that real strong connection and that those lovable experiences for people. So it's telling you something, but I think it's always really good to have that reminder, because about June, mid-year, things can get a little bit out of balance. It starts to get wintry, and it's that external perspective is important.
Absolutely. Brooke, thank you very much for spending an hour with us and sharing your stories and insights into the your journey, but the journey with Sharesies as well. On behalf of NZ Tech Marketers Group, really appreciate it. Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you who have joined in today. Hope you have a fantastic long weekend.
Thanks, Jamie.
Cheers, Brooke.
Thank you.